Welcome to the Family Milk Cow podcast, where in every episode I cover topics that equip you with the skills and know-how to look after your girls in the barn. Family milk cows are more than just livestock. They are a part of our families. They deserve the best care possible from knowledgeable and responsible owners. So pull up a chair or your milk stool and let's dive into another episode of the Family Milk Cow podcast. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 2 of the Family Milk Cow podcast. I'm your host, Kelsey Wolf. You might also know me from the blog and the YouTube channel, Rough and Tumble Farmhouse. In today's episode, we are diving into man versus the machine milking versus hand milking. If you listened to my last episode of the podcast, I talked about my experience with working on a milk line, how I also did some machine milking just with a single cow, and how I currently hand milk. So we're going to talk about the pros and cons of these things. So if you are currently trying to decide what route you're going to go with your own animals, or if you're thinking about switching up what you're doing with your animals, this should hopefully give you kind of some insight or some things to just kind of chew on while you're making that decision. Now let's start by talking about hand milking. That is what we currently do with our cow, and it's mostly due to our circumstances than anything else. I think machine milking is a great choice, but hand milking is where we're at. So let's talk about why. The big thing for us is we do not have water down in our barn, and it would cost many thousands of dollars to get water to our barn. And if you're going to machine milk, you really have to be able to clean up. You need to have water readily available, hot water readily available. Although there are some different cleaning solutions, you can make work with cold water. But the way our barn is set up, what we have for water, it just doesn't really make sense. So it's way easier for me to just bring my bucket up to the house, wash my bucket, set it somewhere to dry, and I'm ready to go. That is kind of one of the big trade-offs with machine milking is when it comes to hand milking, it takes longer to hand milk than it does to machine milk. But on the flip side, it takes much longer to properly clean and sanitize your milk bucket if you're doing a machine milking system versus rinsing out and scrubbing out and then setting out to dry your milk bucket. That's way faster. And so just given, the age of my kids and the amount of time they have patience-wise, it's way easier for me to milk the cow down in the barn, bring the bucket up to the kitchen and clean it there. Another great thing about hand milking is that it doesn't cost much to get started with it. For machine milking, even just kind of a lower end machine, you're looking at somewhere around $400 for that setup. Versus hand milking, you can invest in a nice, decent milk bucket for probably around $50. Another benefit to hand milking is you do get to have a really close relationship with your animal. You are very aware of her physically, what's going on with her because you are right up in her business. You also are aware of her udder health and her teat health and how things feel and how things look normally and how they look on just kind of a day-to-day basis, which you still get a little bit when you're sanitizing teats doing machine milking, but you get definitely less of that than when you are hand milking. Now, in the future, if we get up to where I'm milking more than one cow, then I think it would potentially make sense for us to figure out a way to switch over to machine milking. So let's talk pros about machine milking, which is also going to kind of cover at the same time some of the cons of bucket milking. So obviously one of the pros is that you are not having to do it with your hands. And anybody who has probably done the same thing as me, come spring, you really wish you had done some sort of like hand strengthening exercises because by the time you get done milking your cow, your hands are just aching those first like couple weeks. So obviously the machine is going to do all that work for you, which is really nice. Additionally, because it is a machine, once you have everything kind of set up and calibrated appropriately for your particular cow so that it's working well, anybody can do it technically. I mean, they need to learn how to do prep and setup, but learning to hand milk a cow is definitely a skill and you have to be very comfortable being close to an animal. So a machine for some people, if you have multiple people that are milking an animal, a machine is going to deliver a much more consistent milking experience for your cow than someone trying to hand milk. Now, I have read, and I don't know if it's true or not, that machine milking is better for udder health than hand milking is. I guess I don't know if this is true or not. My cow has only ever been hand milked, and she's 9 years old, and she has this seems like such an inappropriate. She's got the udder of a 2-year-old. She looks beautiful because she's never really had her udder, beaten or abused. She's never really been pushed for production. She's just a homestead cow. So I don't know if that has to do with not machine milking or it's just because she's a homestead cow, not part of more of like a commercial dairy setup. But that being said, if anyone listening, which I'm sure there are some definitely nursing moms listening to this, it's incredible the amount of things that are very similar between being a nursing mom and things that are exactly the same or very similar for your dairy cows. I think about obviously I prefer to have my baby nursed. That's the most comfortable and easiest way. After that, my next choice would probably be to just use a pump to get the milk out. The last thing I would want is to have some person trying to like hand express milk. It would not be very comfortable. So I don't know how much cows are the same in that way. Probably not nearly as close, but I couldn't help but think about kind of that comparison. Like, yeah, a machine definitely is consistent. It's not like very comfortable compared to just, having my baby nurse, but that's certainly the route that I would prefer to go. As I was saying there before I went off on a random tangent, is I think that if you are milking 2 cows or more, you're going to save a lot more time to machine milk and then spend that extra time you've made up washing your machine versus the amount of time it would take you to hand milk your cows and then go wash your bucket. Ultimately, you're going to save time, I think, once you've got more than one cow that you're milking by using a machine. That's just me personally and how quickly I milk. Maybe it's different for you. Now, some negatives a little bit with machine milking is that, of course, there is the higher initial cost to get into it. Like I was saying, you're looking at several $100s. You can find used equipment, but then, of course, you do usually have to replace a lot of the hoses and things like that. Just like with hand milking, how there's a learning curve of how to do it properly, same thing with machine milking, how to properly handle everything, how to have things set in terms of pressure and stuff like that is all going to vary on your cow and on their teats. And so it might take some time to find that sweet spot to make sure you are effectively and comfortably milking your cow. You are also going to have some sort of a setup for cleaning the machine, which certainly takes time. You'll have to have access to water for cleaning out your machine. You have to take everything apart, scrub it out really well. You will have to, again, even if you're not buying a used machine, just after you've used your own, a lot of times I've seen them recommend replacing all those hoses and things every 6 months at a minimum. And I think probably one of the biggest things, if you don't already have a backup source for electricity, is if you do not have power or a way to get power to it, it is not going to work. So if you have thunderstorms or winter storms or something coming through where you're losing electricity, or not even that, if something goes wrong on the machine itself and you can't use it, you now either need to have a backup already ready to go, an alternate source of power, or you are now going to have to get however many cows you're milking with that machine, you need to get them milked by hand, which if they're not used to it and you're not used to it is really going to be a struggle. One other thing I will say that I think is a big pro for machine milking is that as long as you are sanitizing your equipment properly, which there is a whole episode in season 1 about proper equipment sanitation, as long as you are sanitizing your equipment properly, I think that it is much easier to keep your milk as clean as possible by using a machine. Because when you're hand milking and you're just milking into a bucket, unless you have a special cover over your pail, you are exposing it to more opportunities for pathogens to get into your milk. Versus if you're machine milking, it's going straight from their teat, straight into the machine, straight into the stainless, through the tubes into the stainless steel. The whole process is much more contained and you're less likely to get flies or poop or dirt or whatever in there. It's most likely, as long as the teats are nice and sanitized, you don't really have that risk. So at the end of the day, hand milk, machine milk, I honestly don't have a strong preference either way. I think if you are going to machine milk, the biggest concern for me would be having backups ready, not when not when the power goes out. That's not the time to be scrambling for a backup, but to plan for those backups right away. So if you have the setup where it makes sense that you can keep everything cleaned, you can keep everything powered, go ahead and invest in a milk machine if you want to, but make sure you have backup parts for just about everything. If you can potentially invest in having a backup machine, even if it's a cheaper machine, just having one there. So if something craps out on your main one and you can't figure out how to fix it, making sure you have those alternate power sources. Those are all good things to do if you're going to machine milk. Those are the biggest drawbacks I could see about machine milking. Now, I would love to hear from you all what you think or what you do and what you use on your farm. So make sure you head over if you're on Instagram and follow the Family Milk Cow podcast on Instagram and go ahead and comment on this episode. I'd love to hear if you guys hand milk, machine milk, what you're doing, what works for you, why you chose that. It would be so great to hear from other people in the community. Now, I am releasing this episode here the day before Mother's Day. So if you are a mother of any kind, absolutely a happy Mother's Day to you. I hope that you have to take care of nothing and no one and everyone just takes care of you for Mother's Day. And also, of course, our dairy girls are, for the most part, mothers as well. So make sure they get just a little extra treat for Mother's Day too. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Family Milk Cow Podcast. You can become a part of the Family Milk Cow Podcast by joining the Milkmaid Brigade, sponsoring an episode, or following along on social media. You can find links for all these and more, including show notes, at familymilkcowpodcast.com. If you love what you're hearing, please rate, review, subscribe, and turn on those automatic downloads. One of the best ways to support this show is simply by sharing it. And as always, make sure to give your girl down in the barn a good scratch behind the ears from me.